Greetings and welcome to another Educator Innovator Hangout on Air. It's December 17th, 2014, and we're here to talk about the Hour of Code in action here in Aurora, Colorado, in Aurora Public Schools. So our guests are coming to us from Marachek Middle School. We have a teacher from Marachek Middle School who will introduce himself in just a second. Then we have a teacher from Rangeview High School alongside a small cohort of students from Rangeview High School. But I want to let our guests introduce themselves, and we'll start on my left on the screen. So, Mark, would you please go first? Hour of Code in action.
Hello, I'm Mark Scholdice. I'm a computer teacher and technology coordinator at Marachek Middle School. As well, I am the Scalable Game Design lead teacher in the school district and with the Scalable Game Design initiative from the University of Colorado at Boulder. I got some echo.
We just have a little lag there. How about you? How about over in Rangeview? Can you guys say hello and kind of whip around the room for me?
Good afternoon. My name is Randy Mills, and I am the computer teacher as well as the building tech coordinator at Rangeview High School. I also run a program of technicians throughout the building that fixes and repairs equipment for a building of over 2,500 students. We are the 5th largest high school in the state of Colorado, and so we've got a lot of work. What I would like to do is have my students introduce themselves. They come to us from things like Cyber Patriot as well as our STEM program. So I'm going to have each one of them introduce themselves.
Hey, let me pause you just for a second, because one thing that might help, we got a little bit of feedback, and so what I'm wondering is, Mark, sometimes what helps is if you'll mute your mic while Rangeview is talking, and vice versa. We'll try that. Okay, now the students at Rangeview. Let's try again.
Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Michelle Diet, and I'm a junior at Rangeview, and I'm in the STEM and Patriot programs.
Let me pause you just for a second, because one thing that might help, we got a
My name is Dakota Weir. I go through the Cyber Patriot program, and I'm also in the STEM program.
We'll try that.
My name is Zach Quayle. I come from the Cyber Patriot team from the STEM program, and I'm also one of Mill's technicians.
I'm Ranisha. I'm an 11th grader, and I'm from the Cyber Patriot program.
Awesome. Well, listen, it's so great to have everybody in the webinar together, and it's great to have students, I think. So last week was Computer Science Education Week, and there's a big push during Computer Science Education Week called the Hour of Code. So the first thing I'd like to do is just hear from both Randy and Mark to talk about what we were doing what you were doing at your schools in the Hour of Code and during Computer Science Education Week, and how that kind of fits into your larger computer science education at your schools. So we'll start with Mark. So talk a little bit about what you did last week and how does that fit into the larger landscape. And then also one thing I want to ask you guys to check, and this happens often on these live webinars, is somebody I think might be playing the live feed from the webinar on another tab perhaps. So just if you could double check that you don't have us live on another tab, because we're sort of hearing a delay. So Mark, can you tell us a little bit about last week? Oh, you're muted, Mark. Oh, hey, Mark, you're muted. And because I'm a veteran of these webinars, I have to let you know this kind of stuff happens all the time, and it makes for exciting webinar viewing. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it does. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Hello. Here at Marachek Middle School, we had an open house after school where the kids were allowed to showcase. They're allowed to showcase the different. We got a nice lag here. Anyway, the kids had several projects that they built. They had a first game where they built either Frogger, Pac-Man, a Solon, or Space. And then we built a forest fire simulation. And I have an example background here. And the kids were able to bring in their friends, their family, mom and dad, anybody they wanted to show off these things. As well, we had the Scalable Game Design 1 hour of code available for students who weren't familiar with coding at all to try it out. We even had parents trying it out. So we had a good group of people here with some district personnel, and we had a good time. It was fun. It was a great opportunity to show off how the kids are learning coding.
Awesome. And can you talk a little bit, so you mentioned how students have built video games and they'd also built a forest fire simulation. Can you talk about how that's a little bit of a snapshot of what you do during the regular school year, not during the Hour of Code or Computer Science Education Week?
Yep. All of my classes, I have 5 classes that I teach, grades 6 through 8. 6th graders are in one class, 7th and 8th graders in another class. And we do a unit of scalable game design, and it's based upon the initiative it has the National Science Foundation funding from the University of Colorado Boulder, Scalable Game Design. And the students learn the basics of coding using the Agent Sheets software. And at a point after I feel students are comfortable with the Agent Sheets software, we move on to the 3D software called Agent Cubes. That's what this is back here. This is an example of Agent Cubes. Students learn the classic if-then statements, learning conditions and actions based on the if and then.
Awesome. So I'll transition to Rangeview, and in just a moment I realize I've forgotten to introduce myself and all the fun situating in the webinar. So I'm Joe Dillon, and I am Coordinator for Educational Technology here in Aurora Public Schools. My connection with Ed Innovator and the National Writing Project is that I'm also a teacher consultant with the Digital Writing Project, which is why I'm here hosting you this evening. So now I want to get to Randy at Rangeview. And Randy, can you tell us a little bit about last week and how that fits into the larger year in computer science at Rangeview?
Absolutely. Last week we did several events. I'm going to start with saying that over the course of the week we had over 600 students participate in the Hour of Code in our building. Now the good news is that was 600 more students that may not have had that opportunity. And the bad news is it was only 25%. So my goal for next year is obviously to double that, not only at Rangeview High School, but throughout the district. As a district of 40,000 students, I would love to be able to say that we had 20,000 students over the course of a week work with code. And so we had 2 after-school events that were Tuesday night and Thursday night, of which any student could come in. We also had, as part of our program, a Cyber Patriot Club, which is a national cyber defense competition, and we have probably one of the strongest programs in the country. We have 8 teams. We had a team that went to nationals last year and placed 5th and took 1st in one portion of the competition. We had math teachers, we had social studies teachers, we had history teachers, we had business teachers, we had world language teachers, and we had science teachers. All participate, come get, whether it was carts of laptops, bring students into labs. Everybody was excited, and I'm telling you that hour of engagement that I had in my engineering classes was some of the best fun we've had all year long, and the kids had a great time. And so as an overall step, I have a goal in our district to introduce and develop more computer science, and this is a great stepping stone. We also had the opportunity through the good people at the hourofcode.org was to do a webinar and video chat with Ashton Kutcher, the actor, and it was a wonderful opportunity. It was a great chance to see technology as it applies in the real world, and the exciting things is that we have a buzz going on in our building. We started it last year. We had about 200 kids. This year we tripled that with 600. Our goal next year obviously is 1,200 and to involve much more of the district, and that's where I'm going to depend on people like you, Joe, and Mark to get the word to the streets.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'm wondering, well, certainly I think in our district, I think it's important to say that we've taken the work that Mark has begun at Marachek Middle School, working with CU Boulder with scalable game design, and we've begun to train, Mark has begun to train cohort after cohort. This is 3 years of him training small cohorts of teachers, and then supporting them through, sometimes weekly professional learning, other times one-to-one coaching opportunities, supporting a broader swath of teachers at the middle school and the earlier levels with scalable game design. So deconstructing video games in order to build video games, and then designing science simulations. So we've seen that expansion in APS, and then also I would say that last year and this year we've noticed that initiatives like Hour of Code bring up new interest in our district, even outside of our our influence and our sort of systemic approaches to spanning. So Computer Science Education Week generates a buzz that we can't really parallel in our district, but it bolsters the efforts that we have going on. So I'd be really interested to hear what the students did last week as part of Computer Science Education Week. And so, yeah, can we maybe whip around and talk to the students?
Sure. We'll do that, but I do want to say from our perspective also is I'm lucky enough to have been asked by Mark a couple of times. So we're actually introducing the scalable game design at the high school level too, and at Rangeview we now have 2 teachers doing that. So we're going to have probably 200 kids that will expand all the great work that Mark has done over at Marachek. So let's start with whomever wants to speak. We'll start with Dakota. She volunteered.
So with our code, I was in Mr. Mills' engineering class, and so we worked on that for one class period. And also I went there for a Tuesday and a Thursday during Cyber Patriots to go ahead and do some Hour of Code. And last year I went ahead and that was the first time I was introduced into Hour of Code. And so it was really fun, so I hope to really do it again another time.
What school did you do it before you got here?
Columbia, but we were just doing it because we needed something extra to do.
Now you have more of a purpose. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Michelle?
So I did Java code. I did the work with Python because when I was a freshman, I got to do some work with Python, and it's good to keep practicing so I won't forget it.
So you were coding in Python last week?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Zach?
For me, the Hour of Coding was kind of a step in advance for me because when I started doing this was in my 6th grade, all the way at Quest, and I started doing HTML. And then my sophomore year, Mills introduced me to higher tiers of HTML with some JavaScript, and then this last week of Hour of Code, I did more JavaScript, Python, more HTML, C++, Ruby, all this other coding I was not introduced before.
Awesome.
For Hour of Code, I worked with HTML and CSS to start a website that I'm working on for a project, and I also started to work a bit with JavaScript.
What class are you using that website for?
Web design.
So web design. So this stuff is transferring over to other classes as well.
All right. I think it's great to hear those snapshots, and I also think it presents a pretty cool picture of how the Hour of Code, there are a lot of different entry points, whether somebody's a total beginner or someone's revisiting Python because it's good to practice with Python. So I think it's just an interesting snapshot on that work. I want to jump back to Mark a little bit because I think one of the things that interests me in my role is the equity questions around the Hour of Code and Computer Science Education Week. And I also know that there are sort of equity considerations behind the scalable game design work at CU Boulder and also at Marachek. So and also just kind of a heads up to the students is that I kind of want to get your take on these equity ideas. So as Mr. Scholdeis kind of describes, like, why the program is important for, you know, students of color, students like girls in particular, or students who maybe otherwise wouldn't have access to computers. I wonder if you can sort of be thinking about, you know, how does that fit with your perspective at Rangeview? So Mark, what do you think? Can you share a little bit about the equity considerations in scalable game design?
All right. Sorry, I was having a little problem with the unmute there. One of the goals of the initiative is to build interest for students in the computer science industry and jobs down the road. And as well, we want to build up interest in female students and in minority groups, a larger contingent. And the research is finding that this is taking place. We have a lot of students who are very interested that really weren't interested in computer science before. And the data that the folks at CU Boulder are collecting is proving that this program does build interest in those two different groups. And that's one of the really cool pieces that I find is that it allows for storytelling, students to tell a story through the building of their game. It allows for a large engagement piece where students have a lot of buy-in. They get to make it look the way they want it to look, and it hooks a lot of kids. And I find kids that have behavior issues at other times during other units in the class, having a hard time focusing, really buy into this and really enjoy it. That's one of the key pieces I find with that.
Yeah, and one of the pieces that I think is important to highlight is kind of the assertion from scalable game design that basically the reason that we don't see more, for example, girls in computer science fields and in computer science classes in high school is because what I think they say, and I want you to check me here, is that because often students' exposure to computers and computer science is really done through clubs, and then often it's sort of opt-in type stuff. And with scalable game design, what their assertion is that all students should be introduced to coding and computer science as part of their regular coursework. So they have to have experience before they can decide if they're interested in it. And so what they say is, if we put computer science in the regular coursework, then we'll stop seeing, we'll start to see more girls, we'll start to see more students of color in computer science because they'll have access and they'll know that they're interested. Whereas if we just leave computer science and coding in club spaces, then the students have to have the initial interest in the first place, so they've probably had some access in order to demonstrate interest. Does that accurately represent it, Mark?
Yeah, and you'll even know with watching like the code.org videos that our country is in a big need for workers in the computer science industry, coding people, as well as many other areas in tech, and we are not providing those students to the industry. So one of the big goals of this Scalable Game Design Initiative is to build that interest.
So that's one of the things I'd like to get maybe the students' view first, and then maybe Mr. Mills can kind of wrap up the comments over there at Rangeview. But the question I wonder, I'd like to hear from the students about is, what do you think about that idea? Do you think that if more students tried coding and computer science, that more students would be interested in the field? Do you think that exposure will start to, you know, will start to get girls in particular enticed about computer science? Will it start to get some of these underrepresented groups, like students of color, interested in computer science? What do the students think?
I definitely say it would help out with our code and having students try it out a lot more, because in my opinion, it's really fun to try and do many different things, like ask what person's name is, or as simple as 2 + 2. But I think if we can get at least students to do this like once, it will probably get bigger and bigger each time.
Yeah, for the coding that I've done and with a lot of the working with technology, I've seen some kids that like, oh, they hinted at it, they never liked it, but as they got into it, they got more into it, they saw things, job opportunities that they could go into later out of high school, out of college, even some degrees that you can work for, just for some simple educational tools with technology.
The issue I've seen is like there isn't very many girls in Cyber Patriot program still, but it's because they've never gotten a chance. Because I've been in it for 2 years, and there was 3 girls for 2 years, and now there's about 10, and it's barely any growth compared to the rest of people. It's just because they never get introduced to it like the guys do.
I think that definitely with the right environment and encouragement, it could bring more perspective to students to computer science. If you're able to play on what people are passionate about and tie that into CS, I think that they would be more inclined to stick with it and try new things.
Yeah.
Michelle brought up a really good point about our Cyber Patriot, because that references your comment, Joe, about working with clubs. Is for my first 3 years that I had done Cyber Patriot, we had 1 girl, and now we've got about 13 or 14 total out of the 50 kids. So we've got about 15 to 20%, but still not the full representation. And I think it is important to give them the opportunity and put it into some other settings rather than just come to this club. Because, again, I know what I'm generally going to attract tend to be males who are video game guys that have done a lot of that stuff. And that's, that's a good audience, but it's not the full and complete audience that we want. And we want to spread that out. But I really think the key to all of this is the teacher, is having somebody with passion. If you look at how excited Mark gets talking about scalable games, you see the passion I have talking about Cyber Patriot or talking about the Hour of Code. I really believe our biggest goal that districts should look for is looking for passion in teachers, looking for someone that has that passion to make this happen. When we started Cyber Patriot 5-6 years ago, we had 3 people. We now have over 50 people, as well as a team at one of the middle schools. And I think that issue of passion and making it so that students are willing to come in the evening just to have a conversation about computing, especially the last week of a quarter. So to me, that's what it is. It's passion. It's passion from the teacher, and it's sharing that passion with the kids, because they'll get swept up in it. And believe me, I think the opportunities are there. At least 3 of these folks have actually even applied for internships through Northrop Grumman this summer. Never would have had that opportunity, and it's huge, huge opportunity for them. Again, we haven't gone through the full process yet, but just the idea to think that these 16, 17-year-olds could potentially be working for companies of that nature right straight out of high school is exciting.
Yeah, I really appreciate the comment about, teachers with passion will be a large driver in this movement. And because I think that especially, when I think about you and Mark, because I know you through our work, you're passionate about this work and you have background with it, and in fact you act as translators for folks. You're the ones who are able to say that, hey, even though only boys might have been turning out 3 years ago, you're the ones who are able to see that all students can benefit from this stuff. You're the ones who can explain it. And I think that so the passionate teachers as translators who can explain how this work translates to other content areas, how it might even inform other career paths that maybe just go alongside computer science. I think that's it's really key. I do want to revisit Renisha's comment when she talked about students being able to explore their passions through CS. And I wonder, because I think your work is about what you were talking about was building websites, right? And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you have passion for that work or how it ties into your interests.
Just in general, I'm kind of passionate about CS because I want to eventually major in that when I go to college. And web design is just another way that I can learn something new related to CS. So the idea of learning something new draws me towards web design and what I'm learning.
Awesome. Yeah, and I wonder, is because I know Computer Science Education Week sparks conversations about what might this do for a student in their career path. Are there ideas around the table with the students with what careers are they thinking about, and does computer science play into their ideas about what careers they might go into?
I've always wanted to do medicine, but I've decided because of SciProject I want to do engineering now and should do a minor at least of computer science because I want to have more experience with it when I'm in college.
Yeah, for me, working throughout my high school and middle school career, I've decided I want to work in the computing field, either computer engineering or computer science, just from all the stuff I've learned and I've loved to.
Well, I wanted to, a while ago I wanted to be an IT person, and then I switched it to a horse vet, and now I kind of switched it back to being a cybersecurity person, because I know there's a lot of, things that have been happening around with, hackers and stuff, and I really want to make sure that, the whole entire world's safe from this happening.
Yeah. The idea that it's a security issue and that you're keyed into that even in your 9th grade year is, I think it's exciting because there's a world of opportunity. I think there's a world of opportunity in terms of technology and computer science. So I want to shift the conversation back to Mark. And Mark, I know you're showing us in the background. We've got a little bit of a fuzzy view. I think it's worthwhile to have the scalable game design as the backdrop, just so you know we have a little bit of a fuzzy view. One of the things, though, I want to touch on Randy's point in terms of teacher passion, because you in particular, I know that when I first learned of your work, you were about 5 years into working in a partnership with CU Boulder, and since then, and even then, you were training teachers around the state on how to teach computer science to students through scalable game design. And I wonder if you could speak to the light bulbs you see turning on for teachers, kind of their early questions, and so maybe that's the first question is, what do you see happen when you first get teachers to start thinking about coding and computer science through the lens of a program like Scalable Game Design?
I had, for my computer science programmer in college, I actually was taking courses in it and eventually figured out that I prefer to teach rather than go build accounting programs for banks. At that time, that's pretty much what was available in coding. But I did a lot of coding in college, and inside of that, I learned a lot about thinking skills, problem solving, planning, those types of pieces. And I wondered I'm going to have to pause for a second. Somebody's outside my door being noisy.
That is the real world. That's what happens when you teach in a middle school. One of the things I wonder about for the students. Mark, you calmed the hallway disturbance so quickly.
Yeah, I'm sorry. They're doing a can collection outside my door, and I forgot to shut the door. My apologies.
No problem.
Anyway, I wanted students to know these thinking skills that I learned. Help me become a better thinker, a better planner, better problem solver. So I thought, for how many years that I've taught, 24 years now, how do I get this to students? And, teaching coding like Python and Java to middle school students is very tough. And it's not something that would be very easy. You miss a comma here and there, and it'd be tough. I was introduced to this program 7 years ago. And it was exactly what I've been looking for, an opportunity for students to learn how to plan a game, how to build a game, how to troubleshoot the game and finish it, and get all those thinking skills behind it. In my eyes, it is the most engaging program that I've ever seen in anybody else's classroom and that I've done myself. It's impressive, and I see a lot of teachers buying into this and seeing that it's very powerful. Thus, I felt that I needed to spread that message to other teachers. So I've been involved with the board for the Scalable Game Design Initiative from CU Boulder, and I've spent 5 years, at least 5 years teaching. And it came to the head in December 2012 that I was the only teacher in the Aurora Public Schools teaching this initiative. And at that point, I had a Scalable Game Design showcase with several district officials coming by to see what I was doing, and they saw the excitement in the students. And that's really the antithesis of what we're looking for here, is excitement in students. So when I see students excited, I get excited. It helps me, motivates me as a teacher, because that's what I'm shooting for. I want students to be engaged in what they're doing. So this is expanded in Aurora. I've been given the opportunity by Kevin Reba and Joe here to work with other teachers and expand this program in our district. And I find for our urban students that this is a very tremendous tool to teach them about thinking. Even if they don't go into a career of computer science, they get the opportunity to plan and think higher in Bloom's taxonomy. I'm a big proponent of Bloom's taxonomy. Not just understanding things, applying things, learning to evaluate things, synthesize a problem, find a solution to it, back and forth. And it's powerful. And I'm very impressed by it, and I want to share that.
Yeah. One of the things I think is really interesting and it intrigues me because, you know, the lens I bring is, my background is as a middle school literacy teacher, and then, of course, I'm passionate about digital tools and how they're changing education. I think that it's interesting, though, like scalable game design is kind of built on the premise that at first the introduction for students is to deconstruct these classic arcade games, like a Frogger. You kind of deconstruct it to study it, to understand the parts, and then build your own version. And so what I see is kind of a remix culture, right? It fosters remix culture, and then it also like the thinking skills you talk about, to me, it's about deconstructing a model in order to envision what an iteration on that model is. And I think that I know back when I used to teach literacy, we would deconstruct powerful, passionate writing to understand how that work was done. And I think the idea that you can take something apart in order to learn how to build it and think about how to build it better is something that I think is fascinating in the way scalable game design frames coding for kids. So I think that's great, and it speaks to me about the transferability of computer science. So I want to. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I want to throw something else in here. I apologize for interrupting there. One of the big pieces of the initiative, besides building the interest, is to teach computational thinking skills. That is a big push in the National Science Foundation. The National Science Standards are asking students not only to play with simulations and get data from simulations, but be able to build those. And you can build those by learning computational thinking patterns. You can see in my classroom here above my Promethean board here some of the patterns listed that students can learn. We want students to learn about absorb, generate, transport, collision. Those are some of the basics from Frogger. But the idea here is that students learn these patterns and learn how to program these patterns. And that's where computational thinking comes in.
Yeah. Cool. So I want to whip back over to Rangeview High School. And one of the things and I'll prompt you a little bit, Randy, because as we think about like the transferability of what a student might learn in during CS Ed Week and the Hour of Code, or the transferability of what a student might learn when they're learning to program. What I've seen in your classroom is really, what I've seen you launch is just sort of like problem-based learning, right? You pose, and I haven't seen all of your classes by any stretch, but the idea that you pose problems, and so while they're learning to code, I think they're also taking on problem-solving skills. Can you speak a little bit about how you approach teaching coding and maybe the transferability?
Sure. One of the things, and again, this really is expressed with our Cyber Patriot stuff, is we give them a virtual machine, a simulation, like Mark is speaking of a machine that may have everything from viruses on it to hidden files. My personal favorite is we'll even sometimes put a picture on there, and with no information other than just the picture itself, tell them, ask them where the picture was taken, being able to deconstruct the code to look at the GPS readings that came off of the camera. And so it is taking those computational skills, it's taking those opportunities to problem solve to the next level. And the piece that I think really fits, and it's very vertical in its structure, is Mark's getting them to learn that computational, those problem-solving skills, and then when I get them, is we enhance those by giving them real-world problems. Now, when there's an issue in the computer classrooms, a lot of times the teachers, they won't call me as the technician for the building. They'll ask my students, can you fix this? And can you figure out, I've got viruses, I've got malware, I've got all of these issues, I can't sign on to the domain. And so what we've now taken is these kids from Mark's level and levels prior to that, built that computational, laid real world problems onto it, and now setting them up to go beyond our four walls and beyond Aurora Public Schools into areas where they can function in any business, any industry. They have the problem-solving skills. They have the persistence. They have the knowledge and the structure to work on, you know, those challenges, while at the same time understanding what it's like to work in a workforce, because they have to work in groups. They have a team of 6 folks, and they may have 3 or 4 images. And the file structures are everything from Ubuntu to servers, and the whole issue around that week of code is highlighting how we can take those bits and pieces and lay them onto a real world setting, because we talk about real world a lot in schools, but this really is it. I mean, these kids can walk out of here, and I know Renisha's point about building websites. I have students who build websites for small businesses right out of high school, and it's just it's a tip of the iceberg. And so I mean, the opportunities for them is absolutely endless. And when you talk about the opportunities that they're speaking of at age 15, 16, 17, I would have never dreamed of that. I was going to either run a retail store, which I did for many years, or the ever popular, I'm going to be a fireman. But they have so many things that are laid out there, and all of these skills provide them the opportunity to do really anything they want.
Yeah. So one of the things I want, kind of building on that point, I wonder, because I know we heard from Michelle and also Dakota. Like, Michelle, you were saying you originally wanted to go into medicine, and now you're thinking about more of a computer science education related field. One of the things I wonder about, though, is, as we think about the benefit of coding in schools, is, do you think this is good learning even if you were to go into medicine? So I know I read a quote last year reading about the hour of code. Somebody said, I think all CEOs should learn how to code, not because they need those, not because they would do much coding, but because they need the skills they would gain. So I wonder what you think about that idea, that the skills you gain would serve you in any career, even if you didn't go into a technology career. I'm interested in what the students think about that. Do you think the skills you gain would serve you in other careers?
With medicine for research, because I always wanted to do the background of research, it was like I could build the machine instead of finding a cure for diseases, because the diseases are, everyone wants to cure them, but they don't build the machine that can cause a cure. Like, they don't build a new syringe so people can have shots without having the fear of a disease.
Yeah.
What else do you guys think?
Well, anyone, in my opinion, anyone could learn anything about computers, because if you're interested in art, you can learn coding to build stuff that you wanted to come to life. If you're interested in sports, you can build websites for sports. Just really any interest you have that's not in computers can be done with computers.
I think also other skills rather than just learning about computers can help you, such as as you were saying, problem solving and critical thinking, and in my case, sometimes perseverance. When I come to something that is giving me trouble in my code, it can get pretty frustrating, but I know to work through it, and I eventually get to it. Sometimes through scrapping everything and starting over, other times through just looking up and fiddling around with things, just playing around till I fail and try again and finally get something to work. I think that could definitely help in any field and even in just everyday life.
Yeah.
Well, but I think it would be very good for everybody to know code, even if it's as simple as like a cashier working. It's always nice to have people know code, because if something happens to the computer and there's nobody that knows that is an IT person, that they can try and fix it right there. So the customers have to wait. And also, like my father, he's actually an IT guy, and he has all these different things, and he never really went to college, but he did a lot of like classes with computers and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how the questions have kind of showed that, yeah, the thinking skills you develop in a computer science class or through coding can help you in lots of other places. And I also really appreciate Zach's point that, like, you can bring your passions to computer science and probably find an application. So it can be interest-driven learning. I think that's really important. Mark, I want to come back to you, because the question I asked you earlier, I want to push you a little bit on it in terms of introducing teachers to teaching coding, and I want to hear from you in terms of, like, what are some of the concerns teachers have at first, and what are some of the things they express maybe after trying to teach computer science, like when they start to find success? Because I know you have a unique opportunity to train teachers in this that not a lot of people do. So I'm interested, like, what are the initial questions teachers bring, and then what are kind of the ahas they have as they get into certainly scalable game design, and then anything with computer science?
Well, first off, I always tell everybody my big emphasis is project-based learning. I don't think kids learn unless they're doing a real-world application of what they're learning about. I think it's boring if you're just teaching out of a book. So everything that I do is project-based learning, and I feel it's important. I emphasize that to teachers. So whether I'm teaching somebody about scalable game design or I'm talking about other projects I do, it is project-based learning. It's a very important skill for students to learn, and they can learn them as teams and helping with other kids. As far as helping other teachers, I think that alone is kind of an eye-opener, because in our world right now, we're not, in the education world, we are not introducing project-based learning a whole lot in buildings. We had a group recently review my school here, and the reviewer, we had a big company come through and review everything we were doing in our building. The reviewer told us that I was one of the only people in the building doing real-world application via project-based learning. So the aha moment ends up being along the lines of, wow, we could take a real-world situation, have students build a project. It's kind of one of the aha moments. Related to scalable game design, it's the engagement level. Project-based learning does build engagement, and with students in the scalable game design, when they can see that what the work that they do builds something, and they can actually animate it and make it do what they want, they can make it look the way they want, there's tremendous engagement involved with that. As far as encouraging people in scalable game design, to me it comes down to my own personal testimony. It is the most engaging thing I've ever seen in anybody's classroom. And it's powerful, and it hits kids from all areas of life, male, female, whatever ethnicity. They all find something that they really like about it and can get into it with.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to hear the real world applications, and again, so we had a chance to. Last week was Computer Science Education Week, and the hour of code is touted as super important. And then I think right now unpacking, what's important about it. And what I'm hearing are, the idea that students can bring their own interests to computer science and find a way to delve into their own interests while learning computer science. And then I also hear about the way that the instruction provides real-world, authentic opportunities for students. And so I mean, those are some of the reflections I have, and I know that for me, it's a powerful opportunity to hear folks reflect after computer science education, and kind of unpack the learning. So I want to know a little bit more about. Especially from the students, I wonder if you could talk about like a day in the life of a computer science education or a computer science student. Like, what's the most challenging project you've done this year, kind of thing.
So what have you guys done this year that's been challenging?
One of the things that I've done that's challenging is that with the challenging. It was really, I started doing it in STEM when I was in engineering with some of we're learning digital electronics, which actually you can get a job in the field with, and just the problem solving that you need to know to do to get past making these complex circuits with multi-sim and LabVIEW, and some of the stuff that can be used in an industry or field that deals with computers. Working with maybe one person or a group of 4, it brings all the ideas from all the students that I worked with all together on one project, and we came out making some great things.
I'm going to sneak back across. That was my problem. High school goes 24/7, so I apologize for that. What else? What other projects have you guys done?
Well, I know Cyber Patriots, our last round was kind of difficult with Ubuntu, and especially because some of the things that we went over were definitely new, and we had to go ahead and research on Google and stuff of what to do a lot of times.
One of the things that I try to get across to them, and I should be able to say this, and they should all know what my phrase is this also, these types of projects provide them the opportunity to learn the real-world skill of failure. And I think that's a critical piece, is I think we spend so much time in school saying everything has to be perfect, or don't turn it in, or it's not acceptable. But we have a saying in my classes and everything, and does anybody want to tell them what it is? Have you made a
good mistake today?
Have you made a good mistake today? And this is a great way to work through that through these projects, because a lot of them have been really, really challenging. Michelle, what have you done? You've done some stuff this year.
A lot of what I've done this year is just I've had a lot of projects. I've done Cyber Patriot, especially with working on images. I tried to learn Ubuntu, but it didn't work.
Going off of what Dakota and Michelle said, yeah, diving straight into Ubuntu without any prior knowledge is definitely very difficult, but it's also very interesting. So when you make a little success, there's a nice victory dance to go along with it after being frustrated for so long.
Awesome. Yeah, I think about when you talk about the importance of failure and making good mistakes. We know, right now we're broadcasting on a network called Educator Innovator, and I really think about how innovation in education is to allow for it. We really do have to reframe failure, because if we think about, I guess from my perspective, if we think about the things that have worked maybe in our minds like best in classrooms over the last 20 years, well, there's a lot of safety in staying with that. And so as we encourage educators to think more innovatively about their practice, or to encourage a district to take on more computer science, we have to think about, how do we fail in safe ways, and how do we make good mistakes as we try to invite more people into learning code and teaching computer science and exploring sort of the transferable ideas from computer science. So I really just appreciate that everyone's willingness to think in public. I mean, I think that's one of the important parts of this is how the teachers are willing to come out and speak about their practice in public, and then students are willing to speak about their practice, their schoolwork in public. So I think it's terrific. Let's jump back to Mark, because I wonder, Mark, in terms of if you can speak, because we're running a little bit low on time, and so as we think about what are some of the goals for you, Mark, for the remainder of the school year with computer science education and coding?
Well, as I'm finishing up my first semester tomorrow with students, we are finishing a forest fire simulation. I have an example of one sitting in the background. I don't know how well you can see that. Try to zoom it in a little bit. But the idea is to teach students the basics of coding through Frogger game, and if they've had me before in class, I move them on to some other games. But the idea is to continue to give them new material and move them on to other computational thinking patterns, because when you're learning Pac-Man, you're going to learn collaborative diffusion and hill climbing, and I also want you to learn polling. So we have other patterns we want you to learn in these other games, and then after we learn some of the basic patterns, I want you to learn a simulation like this, where you're learning how to spread a forest fire and how the data is collected for that, and how to do simulation properties, and being able to take that data and export it and use it. So those are some of my goals as an educator. I want to continue helping other teachers get the depth into the Scalable Game Design program that I have. I want to pass that along to other people, and I want to spend as much time doing that as I can. It is important that students get this because of the thinking skill power. The National Science Foundation funded the grant for CU Boulder twice for a reason, and that's unheard of, especially in the day and age of the lack of funding in education.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, the opportunities I got to visit your classroom when students were starting to tinker with their forest fire simulations, and so I was seeing how they were debugging their forest fire simulations, and then it seemed like the next logical step was them being able to mess with the variables, or tinker with the variables, so they could see sort of how best to prevent forest fires, or how best do you thin the trees to avoid forest fires. Is that right? In terms of their next
simulation has a global variable related to density of the forest, and the forest is controlled by a controller that allows you to build different densities of the forest. So we can say, I want a 50% density forest. You can tell it to be a 70% density forest, and then you can get into these conversations with the students about why the Forest Service allows certain burns up in the mountains, why they have controlled burns, in taking some of the thickness out of the forest, so to speak. One of the other cool things that I'm going to add into this is the planning process. It allows the Scalable Game Design Initiative has allowed me to dig deeper into teaching writing skills for my students. In that process, they're writing down what are the computational thinking patterns involved with, and writing those out. Recently, they spent time writing out their success criteria that we needed for this project to complete it. As well, it's given it a great opportunity to teach math, and I think this is one of the items I like passing on to other teachers, is that this tool is teaching some of the basics that school districts are asking for. We need more writing skills. We need an emphasis in math skills. So these as well are some items that I'm enjoying discovering myself from other colleagues, and I'm implementing in my own room, as well as I'm able to pass on to folks that I help teach.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now, excuse me, back at Rangeview, what are some goals for the remainder of the year?
You know, for me, I'm going to put it very simply. For the remainder of the year, my goal is, when you look at what I have to work with, the quality and talent, the only thing I can ever hope for as a teacher, as a goal, is to give them and lay some skills out there, whether it's problem-solving skills or others, to make them successful and happy. If they, you know, in 10 years look back and say, you know what, I enjoyed that, I was successful because I learned those skills, then it will be worth it. We spend so much time worrying about judging teachers based on test scores and stuff like that. And to me, that's not the way to judge a teacher. Go out and ask my students who are out of high school for 10 years, are they happy? Are they successful? And did the skills that they learned here helping them in their everyday job? So that's an assessment I'll take from the world. And so that's my goal, is I want to give them those skills that will make them successful, learn how to work. And so what are you guys' goals? Because you guys are probably a little more concrete than mine. Mine are about you guys as a group. What are your goals specifically?
Well, my goal is right now, me as like a couple, 6, 7 other students are being trained by Mr. Mills as to help around in the school, fixing computers and all this stuff as the technicians. I want next year, if it can, I want it to be a class so we can actually spend time and learning more and more about some of the stuff, other than just having it as your technical off period where you maybe just work every hour or so, just maybe like running around trying to help teachers with some of their ridiculous problems that maybe all you have to do is turn them on or off. But yeah, it's just I want to spend more time in this internship that I've been offered by Mr. Mills.
I'd like to just learn as much in the field of CS as possible. Try to dabble in a little bit of everything to narrow down to exactly what I want to do in life. And if possible, maybe score a few internships myself to work through next year.
Learning more of our code, because I know there was like 4 different programs Mr. Mills showed us during our code, and one of them is more lot more intricate and stuff, and so I'm hoping to maybe learn how to use that one.
My goal is to kind of like actually be able to help people, because like my dad's really good at computers and I want to actually like be able to help instead of just having him fix everything.
And this is why I do this, because is this the best job in the world? I'm telling you.
That's awesome. And I want to echo your thanks. Your thanks to the students for joining us after school. We are almost out of time, so I want to take this last minute. To thank our guests and to thank everyone who is watching in the chat room. Now, if you're interested in learning more about connected learning, please make sure to check out the Connected Learning Alliance site at clalliance.org, where there are tremendous testimonials from practitioners and informative multimedia pieces. And if you'd like to keep abreast of future opportunities from Educator Innovator and partners like the one we heard from today, Aurora Public Schools, and of course the Denver Writing Project, sign up for the monthly newsletter at educatorinnovator.org and follow Educator Innovator on Twitter at innovates_ed. So thanks, everyone. Good night.